The first time I stepped onto the tarmac of Fort Blackwood, I felt every eye on me. The drill sergeant barked so loud it cracked across the morning fog. "Private Hayes, step forward and explain why your boots look like they crawled out of a swamp." Laughter erupted from the squad around me. My duffel bag was old, worn to the seams, my uniform wrinkled, and my hair stuck out in uneven strands under the cap. I could feel the weight of every whispered insult pressing down on my shoulders. Why was I even here, they seemed to think. What could a girl like me possibly offer to a place like this? Sergeant Miller circled me like a predator, snapping his fingers inches from my face. "Eyes forward, or I'll make sure you regret showing up." I swallowed hard and held my gaze. My voice shook, but I said, "I'm here because I was ordered." The room hummed with disbelief and snickers. It was clear. I was nobody, invisible, a mistake in their world of polished boots and crisp creases. In the barracks, whispers followed me like shadows. Beds were neatly made, gear lined up in perfect rows. Mine looked like it had survived a storm. Lieutenant Ramirez glanced at my bunk with a raised eyebrow and a shake of the head, murmuring something about me not lasting a week. I heard it, of course, and yet I didn't flinch. I stacked my few items quietly, keeping my hands steady even as my stomach churned. No one noticed Port Marcus at first. He was a quiet one, a new recruit himself, sitting at the edge of the bunk room, watching without judgment. His eyes flicked to me now and then, curiosity behind them, as if he sensed there was more than what they were all seeing. The first inspection came at sunrise. Boots polished, belts tight, rifles gleaming under the floodlights. Sergeant Miller's gaze landed on me like fire. "Private Hayes, those boots, that jacket. Do you even own a uniform that fits?" His words cut through the crisp air. I clenched my fists at my sides, biting back a retort that would have earned me nothing but punishment. Instead, I straightened my posture, squared my shoulders, and met his glare. My duffel rested on the floor by my feet, patched and faded, but I didn't move to hide it. It was mine. It was all I had. Breakfast in the mess hall was no relief. Plates clanged and voices boomed over the hum of early chatter. Corporal Jenkins deliberately bumped into me, spilling half a tray of eggs and coffee across the table. "Careful there, Charity Case," he sneered, and the other recruits laughed, slapping the tables. I knelt, grabbed napkins, cleaned the mess, and returned to my seat. No words, no complaint, just steady breathing, letting the cold sting of humiliation pass through without owning me. I caught Marcus's glance across the room. He gave me the faintest nod, a quiet acknowledgement that someone saw me and, for reasons he wouldn't voice, admired that I didn't break. Training drills were brutal. The first obstacle course was mud, ropes, and screams under a relentless sun. Every stumble was amplified by the mocking laughter of those who expected me to fail. "Hey, slowpoke," one yelled as I crawled under a tangle of wires. "Maybe they should have sent you to logistics instead of here." My chest burned, muscles ached, and sweat poured down my face. But I moved. Every slip, every grunted breath was a decision. I would finish this course. Not for them, not for recognition, but for myself. My hands tore against the ropes, my knees caked in mud. Yet I pushed forward while they snickered behind me. Later, during a navigation exercise, I found myself paired with a recruit who had gotten lost in the woods. I didn't hesitate. I led him back on course, silently correcting his mistakes, giving no explanation for why I knew the paths or the subtle signs in the trees. He followed without words, too exhausted to question me, and neither did anyone else. That night, as I lay on the hard bunk, exhausted, I replayed every moment. The humiliation, the sneers, the whispered doubts. My mind stayed quiet but alert, reviewing procedures and sequences I had memorized years before, the ones no one else remembered. The words, the codes, they were mine alone. I thought that was the end of it, my place as the silent, mocked recruit. But then everything changed in ways I couldn't imagine. Sergeant Miller's smirk lingered. The recruit's laughter faded into uneasy murmurs. Marcus, the silent observer, stayed close enough to see, yet far enough not to draw attention. And I, with my tired arms and worn boots, carried more than a duffel. I carried the weight of knowledge. the kind that could turn the tides of respect and authority in ways they would never anticipate. As lights flickered out in the barracks and silence fell, I could almost feel it. The moment was coming when this quiet, invisible strength would speak louder than words, louder than ridicule. What I never expected was how soon it would arrive, or how shocking it would feel. To everyone who had ever doubted me, if this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The next few days felt like I was moving through a storm no one else could see. Every morning, the cold snap of the barracks air hit me like a challenge I couldn't avoid. Drill after drill, the instructors pushed us harder, faster, sharper, and I was already starting behind everyone else. My boots were still scuffed, my uniform still uneven. The smirks hadn't faded. In fact, they seemed sharper. "Nice form, Private Hayes," Corporal Jenkins called out one morning, his voice dripping with sarcasm as I stumbled over a low wall during a morning obstacle run. "You're setting the standard for what to avoid." Laughter followed, echoing across the gravel, sharp against the cold air. I kept my head down and my pace steady. Every muscle screamed, every joint ached, but I moved, one foot in front of the other, one hand gripping the rope a little longer. Quiet persistence was my only weapon, and I held it tightly. In the chow hall, the same pattern played out. Trays clattered, knives scraped plates, and the chatter of recruits filled every corner. I was pouring water into a cup when a rookie bumped me, sending a half-full glass across the floor. The sound of shattering glass made everyone pause, then laugh. "Careful there, Hayes," someone jeered. "You'll flood the entire base if we let you." My hands stayed steady as I cleaned it up. No apology needed, no explanation offered. I just kept going. From across the room, Marcus slid his chair slightly closer, quietly observing, quietly approving. He didn't say anything, but the look in his eyes was like he could see what everyone else missed, that my resilience wasn't loud, but it was growing. Drills became longer, tougher. Rain fell in sheets one morning, turning the obstacle course into a slick nightmare. Recruits slipped, yelled, and fell into mud, and Sergeant Miller's barks grew harsher. "Come on, Hayes! You call that climbing?" His words cut through the rain, cutting deep, but I kept moving, water streaming down my face, heart hammering, muscles burning. I paused only to help a recruit tangled in the barbed wire, guiding him carefully without a word, without a hint of impatience. His eyes widened, almost a whisper of gratitude, and I moved on. Small victories built inside me like secret armor, quiet and unnoticed, but strong enough to keep me standing. Later, during night navigation exercises, we were paired in small teams, lost in the woods with nothing but compasses and fading moonlight. My partner froze at the edge of a ravine, uncertain, and I had to make the call. "Trust me," I said softly, and guided him step by step along a hidden path I had memorized from older maps no one else thought to check. He followed silently, relief and disbelief in his eyes. By the time we returned to base, other recruits had already mocked anyone who lagged behind, but no one had noticed how we arrived first, unscathed. Marcus gave me a small nod, barely perceptible, but enough to tell me someone was quietly rooting for me, silently acknowledging that the girl everyone expected to fail had quietly outmaneuvered them all. The days bled into nights, and my duffel remained worn, boots caked, uniform crooked. Every insult was absorbed, every scoff cataloged, and I used them as fuel. I studied procedures in secret, poring over old manuals no one remembered, sequences and codes from retired units, steps drilled into me from years of discipline no one in the new recruits could understand. It was exhausting, and at times I wanted to collapse in the mud or scream in frustration, but I didn't. I couldn't. Every moment was preparation for a day that would prove everything the doubters refused to see. Then came the day of the equipment failure drill. The entire squad was sent to a simulated urban combat zone, and all standard gear was sabotaged. Radios cut out, weapons jammed, and the instructor shouted chaos into the air. Recruits panicked, stumbled, yelled at one another. Sergeant Miller barked orders that went unheard in the storm of confusion. I scanned the ruined gear, the muddied field, the panicked faces, and instinct kicked in. I directed movements, pointed out paths through the debris, and improvised communications with hand signals Marcus could follow. My squad listened, not out of obedience yet, but out of necessity. Step by step, obstacle by obstacle, we advanced, and by some unspoken miracle, we reached the final checkpoint first. The others stared, mouths open, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. Then it happened. One of the senior instructors, a man usually silent in the chaos, approached with a device he had deemed impossible to operate under these conditions. I recognized it instantly. The sequence was the one I had memorized, the pattern from manuals, that had gathered dust for years. Without hesitation, I manipulated it, activating the hidden override, stabilizing communications, and allowing every team member to function as if the chaos had never existed. The faces around me froze. Sergeant Miller's smirk faltered. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Marcus's eyes were wide, silent astonishment filling the space where words would have been. The recruits who had laughed at me, mocked me, and doubted me, now stared, unsure whether to speak or move. Their arrogance dissolved in a single, impossible action. I realized in that moment how invisible strength works. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for recognition. It simply exists, waiting for the right moment to be undeniable. The squad had survived, succeeded, and the balance had shifted. The mocking voices were gone, replaced by the heavy silence of disbelief. What had been weakness was revealed as capability. What had been doubt was replaced by astonishment. I didn't boast, didn't smile. I simply took a breath, steadying myself, feeling the small victory settle deep inside. I glanced at Marcus, and for the first time he smiled. Not loudly, not smugly, but quietly, a silent acknowledgement that someone who had been dismissed and underestimated had proven more than anyone imagined. I walked off the field that evening, soaked, tired, and exhausted, but not broken. I knew the storm wasn't over. There would be more drills, more tests, more eyes judging every move. But I had tasted the first truth. Resilience matters. Quiet endurance has power. And one day when the time comes, the truth will speak louder than ridicule ever could. The barracks were quieter that night. I hung my uniform, scuffed boots lined like every other recruit's, but mine carried the weight of endurance, lessons learned, and silent victories. Marcus paused at the door, looked at me, and said, barely above a whisper, "I didn't think you could do it." I just nodded, letting the silence answer for me. Something had shifted. Something was coming, and I was ready for it. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning was gray, thick clouds hanging low over the base like a weight pressing down on everyone. Drill horns blasted across the training grounds, signaling the start of what everyone whispered about in uneasy tones, the combined operations exercise. It was notorious for breaking even the strongest recruits. A final test before some were sent to leadership training, others to standard deployment. I stood at the edge of the lineup, boots muddy, uniform damp from last night's rain, feeling the familiar sting of eyes on me. Judgment, doubt, the same smirks that had haunted me since day one. "Hayes, line up properly," barked Sergeant Miller, his voice sharp, cutting through the chill. "Or are you planning on being last again?" The snickers were immediate. I squared my shoulders, jaw tight, keeping my gaze forward. I could feel Marcus standing a few spaces away, silent as always, his eyes watching, understanding. That glance alone carried a weight no words could. The first phase was chaos, vehicles moving in tight formations, simulated smoke grenades, comms scrambled, radios dead. The orders came fast, shouted, barely audible over the hum of engines and rolling thunder of boots on concrete. Recruits stumbled, tripped over gear, shouted over each other. I could see Kyle, my squad's nominal leader, waving his hands, panicked, shouting at people to follow him. But he had no plan. None of them did, except me. I kept my head low, scanning, thinking, moving. My heart pounded, muscles firing, senses sharp. The last week of drills, the late nights poring over procedures, the small victories Marcus had noticed, they weren't just preparation, they were survival. I directed my squad silently, gestures precise, leading them through the maze of vehicles and obstacles. One wrong step would trigger a penalty, but I moved with the confidence that comes from hard-won, quiet knowledge. Then the first crisis hit. A simulated IED had detonated under a transport vehicle. Smoke billowed, alarms blared. Kyle froze, unsure what to do, shouting at the recruits, voices cracking. One of our own, Private Lynn, was pinned under debris from a toppled crate. Everyone hesitated, including me, for a heartbeat, but instinct took over. I dove under the wreckage, grunting, lifting the crate just enough for Lynn to scramble free. The others watched, mouths open, no one moving to help. "Get moving!" I barked at them, my voice carrying more authority than any of them expected. For the first time, I wasn't invisible. By the time we reached the next checkpoint, the chaos had reached its peak. Sergeant Miller was losing his composure, shouting at his squad, frustrated, humiliated that his orders weren't being followed. He looked at me like he wanted to tear me down on the spot, but couldn't figure out how. Marcus's quiet nod reassured me that I wasn't alone. Someone was seeing the truth unfold. Then came the moment that would change everything. The final simulation required us to react to a breach in the perimeter, a situation no one had prepared for. Alarms blared, lights flashed, and a senior instructor appeared, tossing a device we were supposed to disable within minutes. Everyone froze. Kyle stared at it, hands shaking. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. Some recruits panicked, some whispered, others just stared, waiting for someone else to act. I stepped forward. The device was familiar. Every step, every drill, every night I had spent memorizing old protocols flashed before my eyes. Without hesitation, I entered the sequence. My hands moving with precision, fingers flying over buttons like a well-rehearsed dance. The device clicked, a light blinked, and suddenly comms were restored. Orders flowed, teams moved, chaos dissolved. The others stared, slack-jawed, their disbelief palpable. Sergeant Miller's smirk was gone, replaced by a pale, almost shocked silence. "Hayes, how did you—" Kyle started, but no words could capture the astonishment in his eyes. Even the senior instructor, the one who rarely spoke, simply stepped back, nodding, acknowledging the impossibility of what had just happened. Marcus let out a quiet laugh, the kind that fills the space with relief and pride, not mockery. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. The work spoke for itself, but the climax wasn't over. Just as the teams were reorganizing, an unexpected complication arose. A mock casualty trapped in a simulated hostile zone. No one moved. Everyone hesitated, waiting for orders, frozen by fear and confusion. I didn't. I ran, low to the ground, guiding the casualty through the maze of obstacles, improvising paths, hand signals, and silent cues. My squad followed instinctively, trusting the movements that had saved them before. We reached safety moments before the timer ran out. The collective gasp of the instructors and recruits echoed like thunder. When the dust settled, silence filled the field. Eyes shifted toward me. The mocking faces were gone, replaced by stunned realization. Kyle's anger had drained away, leaving only a shadow of frustration and awe. Sergeant Miller's jaw tightened. He could no longer disguise the respect begrudgingly forming in his eyes. The quiet nods from Marcus and a few other recruits spoke louder than any praise. I didn't ask for recognition. I simply exhaled, letting the weight of the moment settle. Later in the debrief, the instructors addressed the squad. They didn't mention the individual acts, not yet, but their tone carried an unspoken acknowledgement. I was no longer the underdog, the weak link, or the one they could dismiss. My actions had shifted the dynamic completely. The very people who had mocked me, doubted me, and ridiculed my every step now faced the truth of their assumptions, and it left them speechless. Even Sergeant Miller, who had been relentless in his attempts to humiliate me, approached with a begrudging respect, his eyes avoiding mine for a moment before he muttered, "Good work out there. Hayes." It was nothing more than 2 words, but they carried the weight of a battlefield lesson. Underestimate no one. Every soldier counts. Every quiet effort has meaning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the base, I sat alone for a moment, boots muddy, uniform damp, heart racing. The exhilaration of victory mixed with the familiar ache of exhaustion. What I had done wasn't just surviving a drill. It was proving that resilience, preparation, and quiet strength could shift the tides. The squad would never forget today. The mocking voices would never fully return. And yet, in the back of my mind, I knew this was just the beginning. The storm was not over. New challenges, higher stakes, more eyes watching. But now the balance had shifted. I had tasted what it was like to stand undeterred, to let skill and determination speak louder than ridicule. The next phase would require even more, and I was ready. Marcus walked by, handing me a water bottle without a word. I nodded, understanding the silent message. You've earned your place, and now everyone else will have to catch up. That night, in the quiet of the barracks, I lined up my boots, checked my gear, and reflected. The exhaustion was heavy, but so was the satisfaction. The mockery, the doubt, the silent whispers. They had transformed into something tangible. Respect earned, authority acknowledged, a shift in the power no one could ignore. I realized then that every insult, every night spent training alone, every moment of ridicule had prepared me for this. Tomorrow the base would wake up to a different reality. The same faces, the same drills, the same orders. But everything had changed. I had changed. The underdog had proved her worth, and the ones who had dismissed me would have to reckon with it. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning air at Camp Falcon was crisp, carrying the smell of wet earth and diesel. I could hear boots clicking in cadence across the parade ground as squads formed under the watchful eyes of their drill instructors. The tension was thick, almost suffocating, and I could feel it pressing against my chest as I adjusted my gear. Word had spread about the previous day's exercise, about how I had taken charge and saved the squad when everyone else had faltered. That buzz of murmured awe made some faces pale with irritation. I knew I hadn't done it for recognition, but the change in atmosphere was undeniable. Kyle was glaring, his jaw set, fists clenched at his sides. He had been the loudest in mocking me during initial drills, the one who delighted in highlighting every misstep, and now his pride was wounded. Sergeant Miller, standing behind him, was less sure of himself. The usual smirk was gone, replaced with tight lips and a flicker of unease in his eyes. Marcus was nearby, leaning casually against a transport vehicle, his expression calm but observant, a silent pillar amidst the storm of emotions. The day's schedule was brutal. Obstacle courses, team drills, and an unexpected tactical simulation that would test leadership as much as skill. The squad was tense, moving mechanically, some still whispering under their breaths. Kyle tried to reassert dominance, barking orders, but no one followed him with the same hesitation as yesterday. Something had shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Even the new recruits, who had once laughed at me, were now glancing my way with curiosity. During chow, I caught snippets of conversation. "Did you see her clear that breach yesterday?" One private whispered. Another added, "She's different. I don't know how she does it." The voices didn't carry mockery anymore. They carried disbelief, a recognition of something they had underestimated. Kyle's glare met mine across the hall, sharp as a blade, but I didn't flinch. I kept my eyes on my tray, moving deliberately, quietly savoring the small victory of self-control. Then came the tactical briefing. Captain Ramirez, a seasoned officer with a reputation for strict fairness, outlined the exercise. A mock hostage situation in a simulated urban environment. "Your squad will have to extract the hostages and neutralize threats without any guidance," he said. The words landed like a hammer. Everyone tensed. The room smelled of coffee and anticipation. I could see Kyle's knuckles whitening on the table, his uncertainty now public. He glanced at Sergeant Miller, who gave him a curt nod, both men realizing that their previous authority carried no weight here. As we deployed into the simulated urban zone, confusion erupted immediately. Radios jammed, visual signals failed, and panic began to spread. Kyle froze, stammering orders, trying desperately to regain control. But the squad hesitated, unsure of who to follow. That was when I stepped forward, scanning the map and signaling movements silently. My hands, my eyes, my voice, they became the tools of coordination. Marcus mirrored my gestures, confirming positions, moving fluidly without a word. Others fell into step, instinctively trusting the guidance they had ignored before. Midway through, the first crisis hit. A hostage was trapped behind debris and simulated gunfire. Kyle hesitated, faltering in indecision, while some recruits froze in fear. I dove in, securing the area, and carefully lifted the barrier, helping the mock hostage to safety. The squad moved with me now, their hesitations gone, following every direction. The tension in the air was electric, disbelief mixing with awe. Then, the ultimate twist. The instructors triggered a secondary complication, a trap set in the building we were clearing. Explosions of smoke and sound created chaos. Lights flickered and the squad was scattered. Kyle shouted orders, his voice cracking. But it was too late. I reacted, splitting focus between covering the team and neutralizing the simulated threat. Every movement was precise, every command decisive. The tension built as the squad reached the extraction point just seconds before the exercise timer ran out. When the exercise ended, silence enveloped the field. The instructors didn't rush to comment, but their expressions said everything. Captain Ramirez walked toward us, scanning faces, pausing as his gaze met mine. For a long moment, no one spoke. Kyle's earlier arrogance had completely dissolved. His shoulders slumped. A mix of frustration and awe etched into his features. Sergeant Miller muttered something under his breath, but I caught the faintest flicker of respect in his eyes. Marcus stood a step back, arms crossed, nodding once, almost imperceptibly. During debrief, Captain Ramirez finally addressed the squad. Leadership is not about rank, it is about action. It is about courage. And in today's exercise, one soldier proved that in ways some of you didn't anticipate. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The entire room shifted, the energy now acknowledging a new hierarchy, one earned through skill and resolve, not intimidation or bravado. Kyle's voice trembled when he finally spoke. I didn't realize... He trailed off, unable to finish. Sergeant Miller cleared his throat, trying to salvage authority, but even he seemed diminished, knowing the truth of the day's events. Whispers began to circulate, not mocking, not derisive, but full of cautious admiration. She actually did it, someone murmured. Others nodded, realizing the underdog had rewritten the rules of engagement without anyone ordering it. By evening, word had spread across the base. The atmosphere had transformed. Laughter that once carried cruelty was replaced with quiet murmurs of respect. Marcus gave me a subtle fist bump in passing, a simple acknowledgement of solidarity, and I nodded in return. The squad, once fractured, had begun to recognize the real measure of worth. And while the instructors didn't award medals for this exercise, their silent acknowledgement, their eyes meeting mine with an unspoken well done, was far more powerful. As I returned to the barracks, boots caked in mud, I felt the shift in weight, not in my shoulders, but in the room itself. Kyle's glare followed me, but it no longer held power. Sergeant Miller lingered in the background, a shadow of a man who had learned humility the hard way. Marcus's quiet presence remained a reassurance. The bond of respect forged in shared struggle is stronger than ridicule. I unpacked my gear slowly, reflecting on the day. Every trial, every insult, every whispered doubt had led to this moment. I had endured, I had adapted, and in doing so, I had altered the perception of everyone around me. That night, as the lights dimmed in the barracks and the chatter softened, I traced the line of my boots in the dusted floorboards. I knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time, the balance had shifted. I was no longer invisible. The squad, the instructors, even the antagonists, they all recognized it, consciously or not. The silent supporter, Marcus, gave me a small nod before turning in, and I understood. This was only the beginning. The next test, the next obstacle, would demand more, but I had proven I could meet it. If this story resonates with you, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning sun spilled over Camp Falcon, painting the barracks in golden shadow. I stood at attention, boots polished, uniform crisp, yet the memory of what had happened over the past weeks weighed heavier than any gear I'd carried. The squad gathered around, quieter now, their eyes not mocking but attentive. The energy in the air markedly different. Kyle lingered in the corner. No smirk, no swagger, just a lingering unease that spoke volumes. Sergeant Miller shuffled papers, glancing at me with a nod that acknowledged the change he couldn't quite articulate. Marcus, silent as ever, leaned against the wall. A steady presence, watching as if he'd known all along that this day would come. The final exercise had been declared, a live drill to evaluate leadership, tactical decision-making, and cohesion. The instructions were simple but severe. Navigate an obstacle-laden course under simulated enemy fire. No guidance. No second chances. Tension rolled through the squad like a storm. Whispers carried uncertainty. The once dominant voices were muted, hesitant. I could feel every eye flicking toward me, curiosity mixing with wariness. I adjusted my gloves, breathed deeply, and reminded myself that every trial until now had been preparation for this single moment. As we moved through the course, chaos erupted almost immediately. Smoke bombs, sudden alarms, and simulated ambushes made the situation tense and unpredictable. Kyle froze mid-command, and a glance from me to Marcus ensured silent understanding. We move as one. I took point, directing movements, providing cover, coordinating actions. Every command had to be precise, every step calculated. The squad followed, trust gradually replacing hesitation. I could hear murmurs, breathless acknowledgement of capability. She's leading them. Then it happened. At the heart of the course, a collapsing structure threatened to block the team's path. The mock enemy had trapped part of the squad, and panic began to rise. Kyle tried to step in, but hesitation made him falter. I didn't think. I acted. I directed the squad to form a protective perimeter, climbed the unstable beams, and guided the trapped members to safety, balancing them with precision and calm authority. Every movement drew gasps, every decision earned immediate obedience. The climax was a combination of adrenaline, fear, and focus, the entire squad relying entirely on me, the underdog turned anchor. When we cleared the course, silence fell. Captain Ramirez approached, surveying the team, his eyes lingering on me. He spoke slowly, deliberately. Leadership is not given. It is proven. Today, proof was undeniable. The squad exhaled, some relieved, some stunned. Kyle's gaze met mine, a mixture of chagrin and respect evident in the furrow of his brow. Even Sergeant Miller seemed humbled, finally seeing that authority is validated through action, not rank or loudness. Marcus gave a subtle nod, acknowledgement without fanfare, a silent testament to loyalty and insight. Back at the barracks, the atmosphere was transformed. Quiet conversations replaced laughter laced with cruelty. The bond of respect held stronger than any title. Kyle no longer mocked but studied, learning in silence. Sergeant Miller quietly sought guidance. No words, just gestures of acknowledgement. Marcus sat beside me, sharing a simple cup of coffee. The kind of small ritual that marks genuine camaraderie. I allowed myself a moment to reflect. From invisible, humiliated, underestimated, I had become a recognized force, respected if not yet fully celebrated. That evening, as the flag lowered and shadows stretched long across the parade ground, I walked alone to the edge of the base. I looked at the horizon, imagining the challenges ahead, the unknown trials yet to come. But for the first time, I knew the truth. Resilience, discipline, and quiet strength earned more than words or mockery ever could. The squad, the instructors, even those who doubted me, they all understood it now. I had rewritten the rules, not for recognition, but for honor, for proof that courage and skill matter above all. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The sun dipped low behind the barracks, casting long shadows across the parade ground. I stood beneath the American flag, the wind tugging gently at my uniform, carrying the quiet weight of all that had happened. Around me, the squad lined up, silent, heads bowed in respect. Sergeant Miller, who had once sneered and mocked, now offered a single nod, a gesture heavy with acknowledgement. Marcus, ever the quiet supporter, gave the faintest smile. It was a moment suspended in time, a stillness that spoke louder than any words ever could. In that silence, I felt the truth settle deep inside me. Dignity and strength are not given. They are earned. Injustice and prejudice can cloud judgment, but they can also sharpen resolve. I remembered the hours of endurance, the whispered doubts, the weight of expectation, and the quiet victories that no one saw. Like an old saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Every moment of ridicule, every sneer, became fuel for action, and actions speak louder than words. This story isn't just about one person standing tall. It's about the spirit that binds soldiers together, the unspoken code of honor, the resilience that refuses to bend. Brotherhood is forged in trials, equality in recognition of true courage, and honor in the quiet decisions we make when no one is watching. To anyone who has ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced, your strength matters. Your perseverance leaves a mark that echoes beyond the barracks, beyond the battlefield, beyond the day-to-day struggle. If this story speaks to you, I invite you to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. Hit the like button to show support for stories that honor resilience and integrity, and subscribe to the channel to walk with us through more tales of courage, sacrifice, and human spirit. Remember, in every challenge, there is a lesson, and in every quiet victory, a legacy. You are not alone, and your strength can inspire those who follow. Stay steady, stay true, and carry that honor forward.